All right, we're going to talk about my grandfather. My grandfather, Mose Troyer, came from, his dad, Jeremiah, is buried in Shuda, Oklahoma. There was a bunch of Amish moved into Oklahoma, and they did a lot of thrashing and a lot of wheat fields and things like that. And there was a lot of heat. So my grandfather, Jeremiah, lived in Shuda, Oklahoma. He's buried there, which is Maisie County. And my grandfather, Mose, he had a heat stroke, so my grandfather sent him back to Bern, Indiana to live with some relatives to recover from his heat stroke. And that's where he met Lydia Wiki, my grandmother, and they got married, and that's why they remained Amish. Most of my grandfather's brothers, none of them, they're all integrated into the social culture of our day, out in California or somewhere. But Mose, he stayed with the Amish, and most of my brothers and my uncles, my dad's brothers, they stayed semi-conservative plain. None of them really stayed with the Amish. I have a brother that stayed Amish. We're all kind of conservative. We're all conservative people. But anyway, then they had the Day-Swartz split. And my dad, he met my mom in Portland, Indiana, which they were a different type of Amish. They had bathrooms and gas plumbing and things like that. They had gas stoves. They had a lot more modern conveniences. But then they moved to Bowling Green, Missouri, which was a Amish settlement, and they helped start that in 1948. That's where my two older sisters were born, and from there, they lived there when my two older sisters were born, and from there they moved to Honewall, Tennessee, and a lot of my dad's brothers joined them down there, Jerry and Sam, and then Dan Troyer, which had been my dad's cousin. They all moved down there to Honewall. And that's where my brother John and my sister Mary were born, in Honewall, Tennessee. And from there they moved to Snyder County, Pennsylvania, the Miserville Milling Company's cider mill and sawmill on the Mohantungi. And they used the head race to saw lumber and press cider on the Mohantungi. They had a head race coming in off a big concrete dam, and it flowed through the sawmill and had a big water turbine down at the bottom, and they would open up the gate a certain amount. And my dad always said that when the water was up well, they could saw. They had a 60-inch circular blade, and they could saw logs, but when the water dropped, he said it'd be a little hard to saw. But he said that water turbine worked good as long as the water was up. That's a very cheap way to saw logs. And it's that way with any kind of hydropower. It's the most cheapest way to make electricity or anything. Hydropower is the best way to do it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't destroy the environment or anything. And except it's hard on the fish, because fish get killed in the water wheels and stuff like that. And the dams stop the migration of fish and things like that. That's just the downside of it. Anyways, that's where my oldest sister, older than I, and I was born in Snyder County. And we lived there for 10 years. And anyways, my mom's heart was still back in Missouri there with her parents, because her parents had moved there too from Portland, Indiana, and were living there. So there was a lot of issues there that my mom wanted to move back. And when I was like 8 years old, we moved to Curryville, Missouri, and that was really the first time I got into a real hardcore Amish church setting where the religion is. In Snyder County, we were all family, and we were more like, you might say, everybody did that which was right in our own eyes, a little bit that way. We just worked as a family, each family did a little bit different. But when we moved to Curryville, you had to wear a white shirt, you had to wear a jacket and a mutza, what we call a mutza, which was a coat with a split down the back when you got baptized. And there was a lot of different things like that that were completely foreign to me that I had never encountered in my life before. And as a young boy, it made a lasting impression that I never forgot the rest of my life. Our bishop there in Curryville was Pete Gerard. He was had a big beard halfway down his stomach, his waistline. And first time I went to church there. In Snyder County, we just had chairs and stuff. We didn't really have church benches and stuff. We didn't really have an organized church. But there they had church benches, and all the men sat in the living room, and all the women sat in the kitchen. And then there was always a bench reserved in the living room where the young marriage-age girls filed in and sat behind the young boys that were marriage-age. And this is all foreign to me, strange, you know. And anyways, I remember the first time I seen this bishop get up to preach. I was just young. I think he passed away. I think he died then, like I was like 9 years old or so. A couple of years after we lived there, he died of a heart attack. And I believe he experienced salvation. I always felt that way because there was some things that happened, like clock stopping and things like that when he passed away. And anyways, he gets up, and he was this big old, he talked Swiss because he was from Bern, Indiana, and he had a heavy Swiss accent. And he quoted 1 Peter there that I remember the rest of my life. I never forgot that because it enthralled, I just shocked me in my, like I say, I was like 8 years old. And he said in his heavy Swiss accent, which I was not as familiar with then as I am today, he quoted it in Swiss. He said, "Eine lebendige Hoffnung durch den Auferstehung Jesu Christus von den Toten zu ein unvergänglich, unbefleckten und verwelkenes Erbe, das behalten wird in den Himmel," which literally in the English translation is, "a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an inheritance incorruptible and undefiled that fadeth not away, reserved in the heavens for you." And I just remember that. And then what really struck with me was that he cleaned his throat out, spit on the floor, rubbed it out. And like I say, it was a shock to me. And I learned a lot of things. I went to school there in that one-room schoolhouse, Whittlawn, behind the old Pete's farm there for a couple of years. Then they built another school closer to our house. But life wasn't very easy there in Missouri. Not as easy as it had been in Pennsylvania, that's for sure. So we